in the present period. See, the point is that the first thing that we must know the information we share our database. Is there is a inequality in the development of, say, Matang, Chamar and Mahar, Mala and Madhika, Valmiki and Jatau, Valmiki and Majbi Singh? At the moment, you get some statistic. It's not that you get some. For example, the Chief Justice has quoted the study of Uma Ramaswamy, where the literacy rate of Malas are lower than that of high caste. But you don't have the full information. What is their representation in job? What is are they economically backward? Ownership of land and business? What is their educational level? What is the nature of discrimination that they face from the subcaste? The last point is by the Pankaj Mittal. He's saying, I don't know for what reason he's saying. What was his intention to say that Varna is better than caste?
Welcome to Ours India TV. After the recent judgment of Supreme Court regarding the subclassification between SC and ST, there is unrest among these communities. So many people are protesting. We have with us Professor Dr. Sukhadeo Thorat sir regarding to discuss the issue. Sir, welcome. My first question is regarding how you are looking after the judgment. Please summarize the judgment and other recommendation.
Thank you, Aman Kamble, for inviting me for the discussion on the judgment given by the Supreme Court related to the reservation within the subcaste. You are right that there has been a considerable resentment and protest among the scheduled castes against this judgment. And therefore, I think it is necessary that we look at the positive and the negative aspect of the judgment.
Right.
From time to time, this issue has been brought before the Supreme Court. The issue of the subcaste reservation has been brought before the Supreme Court. The latest is, of course, this particular judgment. Now, the mandate or the issue before the bench, Supreme Court bench, which is chaired by the Honorable Chief Justice Sri Chandrachud, is twofold. One is that whether the scheduled caste can be subcategorized into subclassified based on the subcaste, number one. And number two, that whether the scheduled caste is heterogeneous or homogeneous. And the heterogeneity or homogeneity is linked with the first question, that if it is heterogeneous and if there is a differential development within the subcaste, then you can subclassify and then provide reservation for those who are most backward. So these are the basic issue, whether as per the Constitution, Article 14 and 15, the scheduled castes, which include several subcastes, can be subclassified for the purpose of reservation. Mm-hmm. And that will depend whether the group is heterogeneous or not. The decision of the Supreme Court is, to put it very briefly, is that Justice Chandrachud, Honorable Chandrachud, who wrote the decision for the bench, to which everybody has agreed except one judge, has agreed that as per the Constitution, Article 14 and 15, a scheduled caste is a homogeneous category, is a heterogeneous category. And therefore, it could be subclassified and reservation could be given to the subcaste in proportion to some adopted method. So that is the basic decision of the Supreme Court. But in addition to this main decision, which is the major mandate, there has the other members have also made additional suggestion. Mm-hmm. And that additional suggestion include introduction of the creamy layer, that is exclusion of the creamy layer from reservation, right. Exclusion of those who have enjoyed the reservation once, or those who have the first generation benefits of reservation, they could also be included. The economic criteria should be used in place of the caste criteria. Then the last point is that there should be a time limit for the reservation. And the one of the judges, the learned Pankaj Mishra, also argued that the caste-based reservation has resulted into casteism. Therefore, we should have a new policy which is not based on caste but some other criteria. So these are this is the brief of this judgment. Now the issue is there is one issue that is important in this is that while the main judgment as well as the recommendations, they are justified on the constitutional validity.
Yeah.
That constitution doesn't come against this decision. The main decision of subclassification and reservation within the subcaste as well as the other recommendation. But in addition to that, they have also justified this on the basis of academic knowledge.
Yes.
By academic knowledge, which mean the status of reservation as well as the status of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, social economic status. So they have brought academic justification in addition to the constitutional justification in favor of this decision. Now, my major problem with this decision is that I don't want to enter into the constitutional validity because it is marked with a lot of controversy. But I will sort of share that how the academic support through this decision is weak and shaky.
Right.
And that is why I feel that the judgment as well as the recommendations are not adequately supported by the academic knowledge about the situation of reservation as well as the situation of the scheduled caste.
Okay. We will discuss further whatever the academic knowledge and all the observations of Supreme Court. My first question regarding this, what is your view on the subclassification and reservation?
If we look at the judgment and the recommendation, but particularly the judgment, the main judgment,
Yes.
that is the subclassification and the reservation within the subcaste, the Chief Justice has justified the subclassification on the ground that there is an untouchability or there is a discrimination
Yes.
within the subcaste. And that is why they are heterogeneous. And since they are heterogeneous, that is some classes practice untouchability against the other subcaste. In other words, they are also trying to say that some subcaste are more advanced than the other. So there is a heterogeneity. And therefore, you can subclassify and you can give reservation within the subcaste for those who are lacking behind. My problem is that the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice, has used 4 to 5 studies.
Yes.
For Andhra Pradesh, for Tamil Nadu, for
Telangana.
Bihar, and for Gujarat.
Okay.
He draw a justification, academic justification, to establish that it is a heterogeneous group, to establish that there is a untouchability within the subcaste, within the scheduled caste.
Not any government reports.
Not any government report, only the private study, because government has not really done much studies. But they have used this because there is a whole lot of literature on untouchability against the scheduled caste, atrocities. But the untouchability within the scheduled caste, atrocity within the scheduled caste, there is very limited literature. But they found
They found.
they found 4 or 5 studies, 2 on Gujarat and 1 on Andhra Pradesh, Umaswamy, Ramaswamy and others.
The Dalit camera person
Yeah,
also
yeah.
given that study.
Yeah. Now there are 2 points which we have to remember. As far as as I am saying that there is a limitation, that the academic studies, the finding of the academic study or empirical evidence from the academic study is not adequate
Right.
to make a judgment that it is a heterogeneous and that there should be subclassification.
Means you are saying it's not adequate.
It is not adequate.
Okay.
So why it is not adequate, there is an important point. If you look at these studies, they only identified the discrimination in social religious and cultural
Culture
sphere.
sphere, right.
Now, social sphere means that they don't possibly eat together, they don't share food, they don't share water. In some cases, perhaps there is a separate temple for
No relativity.
no marriages, and that there is a the lower subcaste face restriction in going to the temple which is
Right.
owned by the some other subcaste. Also some residential segregation, although they are outside the village, but their localities are slightly separate.
Different.
So you could see that the field-based study only point out
Okay.
the discrimination in social, cultural, and civic sphere. It has not pointed out that there is an economic discrimination.
Right.
Now, what is economic discrimination? Economic discrimination means that because Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, when in South Bureau Committee justified reservation on the basis of untouchability, he argued that untouchability involved denial of equal right not only in cultural, religious, and political or social sphere, it also denied equal economic right.
Exactly.
And that equal economic right means you don't have a right to property, you don't have a right to employment in the high caste occupation, you don't have a right to education,
Yes.
you have restriction on undertaking a business. And Dr. Ambedkar really put an argument that it is the denial of economic right which really hamper your economic and educational development and representation in the government. The social, cultural, religious discrimination only reduce your dignity and citizenship right in a way, because you don't get the equal right. And even some of the subcaste also discrimination against them. So that is the limitation of that is the point that the field-based studies have pointed out. Now, what's the problem with this? The problem with this is this, that the goal in the Article 14 and 15 is that the government should undertake policies so that there is an adequate representation of the scheduled caste in government post, as well as they should take a policy so that they are economically developed and educationally developed. Now, this is the goal, but the Chief Justice is identifying heterogeneity on the basis of social, cultural. So there is a disconnect between the heterogeneity and the ultimate goal of Article 14 and 15.
Right.
That is the major, one of the limitation which I think that it makes the justification little shaky and not adequate.
Right.
But there is we can go a step ahead and also see is this, that if the economic discrimination in employment, in business and agriculture matters, and that there is no evidence in the studies that the Chief Justice has reviewed, does it mean that economic discrimination doesn't prevail between subcaste? It may be prevailing, it may not be prevailing. At least there is no evidence in the studies. But assuming that there is a discrimination within the subcaste in economic area, and some of the individual within the subcaste lag behind, what should be the policy? Now, I think it is here that we should learn from Dr. Ambedkar.
Okay.
They should have tried to draw a lesson from Dr. Ambedkar. That how did Dr. Ambedkar deal with this issue? That's very important.
At that time.
At that time, or right from 1990 to 1950, till framing of the Indian Constitution.
Yes.
Because the reservation, base for reservation is there in the Constitution, Article 14, 15, 341.
341.
These basically put together, these articles say that there should not be discrimination.
Right.
And if there is a discrimination, nothing should stop the government from making policies for their adequate representation and economic, social and educational development. So that was the last policy intervention by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, but it began with 1990. Now, how did Babasaheb look at this issue? I think Babasaheb position is like this. Babasaheb says that untouchables is homogeneous as well as heterogeneous.
Okay. Both.
Both. Now, how it is homogeneous? It is homogeneous because all the subcastes are brought together and they are grouped into scheduled caste. Earlier they were into depressed class,
Right.
but they are grouped into scheduled caste. And this grouping as in the scheduled caste came in 1935 British Constitution,
Right.
Indian Constitution prepared by the British. And the same we have accepted in the Constitution. It has been taken as it is.
Right.
So at the moment, the president identified the subcaste and included them in the category of scheduled caste. So scheduled caste is a bundle of the subcaste which are brought together,
Yes.
but who suffer from untouchability for the purpose of reservation. So what is the homogeneity and common factor between them? Untouchability.
Yes.
That all of them, they suffer from untouchability.
All of them.
All of them. There may be some variation, little bit, but basically all of them suffer from untouchability in the sense.
This is the common thing.
In the sense that they are denied citizenship right.
Right.
They are denied access to public amenities. They are denied access to equal civil right or personal right, but they are also denied the economic right to property, business, education, employment in the higher caste. So put together, the social and economic rights are denied to them. So that is why Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's view, scheduled caste is homogeneous group. But he also said that it is heterogeneous.
Okay.
Now it is the same position which is taken by the Chief Justice. He said that it is heterogeneous, and this is mentioned mentioned in the report on the depressed class and Aboriginal tribe.
Okay.
A committee which was set up by the Bombay province, Bombay presidency at that time, of which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was the member. And that committee in fact prepared a questionnaire, circulated the questionnaire, get the data, and then mention that there is some sort of untouchability within the subcaste.
Okay.
In fact, the questionnaire is given in the Bahishkut Bharat.
Bahishkut Bharat, right.
Appeal to the scheduled caste that they should fill this questionnaire and give a feedback to the committee.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to go into that detail, but the heterogeneity Dr. Ambedkar mentioned, because Dr. Ambedkar was one of the members of that committee, is that there is a chapter untouchability with the untouchable.
Okay.
Now, there also the untouchability and untouchable is highlighted in the social, cultural and religious sphere between the subcaste, not in the economic sphere.
Okay.
Which means that the untouchable do not practice economic discrimination against one subcaste against the other subcaste, in the sense that they don't stop them from buying a land or purchasing a land or selling a land. They don't put restriction on hiring for labor or in the educational institution.
Not like upper caste.
Yeah. So the untouchability within the scheduled caste is only in the sphere of social, religious and culture, not in the economics sphere. Although they lack economically.
Right.
Individual within the subcaste, maybe individual which do not have land, which do not have business, which they suffer from low education. So he identified these factors.
Okay.
Heterogeneity and homogeneity. What is the solution of Dr. Ambedkar? Solution of Dr. Ambedkar is very simple. He spent all his life, 37 years, to developing a policy for the upliftment of the untouchable.
Right.
And finally, he came at the two solutions. One is that there should be equal civil right. And since there is a discrimination, they are denied, there should be law against the discrimination. And third is that in order to get them fair share, there should be reservation. That is the ultimate policy that he has suggested. But he has also suggested a policy for those individuals within the subcaste who do not have means of income, land or business or proper employment, and also who lacks in education. For that, he has given a policy of economic and educational empowerment.
Okay.
Economic empowerment policy means distribution of land and promotion of business. And for education, financial assistance. So you can see that on behalf of 3 political parties, the land was distributed cultivable wasteland was distributed to the landless scheduled caste. Scholarships were set up in 1943 to enable them to get education. So Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, to put in a brief, has given a dual policy for the dual questions.
Right.
For a homogeneous disability, which is faced by every untouchable, that is untouchability and denial of social religious right, he suggested reservation. The denial of entry into military and also police and government job, he suggested reservation policy.
Right.
Wherein there should be reservation in legislature, in employment, in education, now in business, public housing. But for the economic backwardness and educational backwardness of the individual within the subcaste, he gave the policy of economic empowerment, educational empowerment.
Okay.
Nowhere during this 37-year period is a struggle for search of appropriate remedy, Dr. Ambedkar ever recommended a reservation within reservation. So what you see that there is a difference. What the judgment is suggesting, the reservation for all the untouchable as well as separate reservation for the subcaste.
Right.
And which is not the case of Babasaheb Ambedkar. Babasaheb Ambedkar recommended reservation for all the untouchable, but economic and education empowerment policy for the individual within the subcaste. Now the objective and purpose behind that is that if they have means of income, if they have a land, business, they will have income, they will take education and become eligible for the reservation.
Yes.
That is the link. And if you have because of good income, if you get education, you can then get the try for the job in the under reservation. But without that, there will be a problem. So I think the let me summarize this on this question is that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's solution is different from the solution given by the Chief Justice. And I believe that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's position is more workable than the suggestion given by the Supreme Court. I will give the reason why. Now the latest situation, if we take as an economist, I would like to speak, is that the Chief Justice and others have also argued that we are recommending subcaste reservation. That is to identify most backward among the subcaste and give them additional reservation, because the Constitution talk of substantial equality.
Right.
Now what is substantial equality? Substantial equality is very simple according to the Chief Justice of India in the Article 14 and 15 is that there should not be inequality between the subcaste in representation.
Okay.
All should have 16% or whatever. So there should not be inequality between the subcaste in representation as well as educational and economic development. Number one. The second criteria they gave for the equality, substantial equality, is that the representation of all the subcaste should be in all the posts, not only confined to the lower category of post, but also all the posts. So these are the two indicators which they have given for achieving the equality between the subcaste, or what they call substantial equality. Now the issue is, will substantial equality will be achieved? That is to say, will there be equality in representation and economic and education development between the subcaste through the policy suggested by the Chief Justice of India? That is, the reservation is already there for the scheduled caste, but subcaste reservation. I think my reading is, Dr. Babasaheb's solution is obviously different, but my suggestion is that the point is that the inequality between the subcaste is dependent on the inequality within the subcaste. If there is a lot of inequality within the subcaste, that is many more individuals are without means of production and low education, they won't be able to take the reservation. So if there is inequality within the subcaste, and even if you have a reservation for the subcaste, those bulk of them who do not have education won't be able to take the advantage of reservation.
Exactly.
So the inequality between the two subcastes will remain. There will be a slight improvement because the better off among the scheduled castes will make use of the reservation, subcaste reservation. But the average between the two subcastes will remain and inequality will remain.
Right.
To put it brief, that the the reservation policy and the subcaste policy of subcaste reservation, if the inequalities are present within the subcaste, you may not be able to achieve the equality between the two subcaste
Yes.
or substantial equality. While Dr. Ambedkar solution will help. So that is the limitation that I think is of the substantial judgment, that is the subclassification and heterogeneity given by the Supreme Court.
Okay, that's why you are opposing this subclassification.
Yeah.
And the education is the main tool
Yeah.
that you are suggesting.
Yeah.
So my question is that Supreme Court also observed and given direction about creamy layer. So what do you think about creamy layer? And they also observed some things that reservation only once or one generation, and there is a time limit for reservation. So
Yeah.
these are the observations done made by Supreme Court. How you react on this?
Okay, so I think this is a very important point. I have shared that the main mandate was subclassification
Yes.
and heterogeneity, but
And the no issue of tribals also.
Tribal also included, but there is no mention of tribal at all.
At all, yes.
There is only 3-line sentence where they are mentioned about the tribal. What is the heterogeneity among the tribal? What is the homogeneity among the
Nothing is
tribal?
discussed.
Nothing is discussed. But the policy is suggested for them without
them
any
also.
examination of their socio-economic situation.
Exactly.
So the other judges, Chief Justice did not really mention, but the other judges have mentioned, made a recommendation, which I have mentioned, that there should be exclusion from the reservation of the creamy layer, economically better among scheduled castes. Reservation should be there only for one generation or only used once. There should be economic criteria. There should be time limit. And then there are other suggestions which I will take later on. But Aman, before I go, I will mention one point of the last discussion.
Okay.
Because that's very important. Because the Chief Justice and others have also quoted the decisions of the Fundamental Right Committee and the Minority Committee.
Okay.
So therefore, I want to mention that point and then switch over to your second question. That point is that the Ambedkar's remedy of reservation, remedies against discrimination in the form of law against untouchability and reservation, and the policy of economic and educational empowerment was then clearly mentioned and consolidated in the state and minorities.
Okay.
State and minorities, a memorandum submitted to the Fundamental Right Committee.
Okay.
The judges should have seen that. They have quoted the state and minority, but they have not quoted this provision of Dr. Ambedkar. There, Dr. Ambedkar has given a final two solutions. One, remedies against discrimination, that is in the form of law against untouchability and reservation in job, legislature and education institution. And then remedies against economic exploitation, which means remedies for economic empowerment.
Right.
There he suggests nationalization of land,
Right.
distribution of land to everybody, basic and key industry with the state, and education in public sector. So you can see that his dual policy, which began in 1990, remained with him till 1955 in the memorandum that he submitted to the Fundamental Right Committee. This point I wanted to reiterate.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now coming to your point of the creamy layer and economic criteria, this essentially involved that exclude economically better class from reservation. Now this is based on the understanding, one of the understanding which learned Justice Gavi has clearly mentioned, that the one policy for a group, reservation policy for all untouchable, scheduled all subcaste, is sustainable provided there is no variation within the subcaste. There is not heterogeneity. So if there are some groups which are way ahead of others, then that uniform policy is not proper. There should be a unequal policy when there is inequality between the subcaste. That's the word that is used. And therefore they have suggested that take out the creamy layer, have an economic criteria. Now there is a problem with this argument. The understanding behind this argument is that The reservation has been used mainly by the economically better off section. Among the scheduled castes, we exclude them. They can develop on their own. The word that is used, very beautiful sentence that is used by learned Justice Gavi Sahib is, they will walk shoulder to shoulder with the high caste. So that is the idea that they have benefited more. Pankaj Mittal has gone one step ahead. That they have benefited more and the poorer classes have been completely ignored. I just want to read his sentence so that you can understand. Pankaj Mittal says that the experience shows that the better off class among the backward, that is scheduled caste, eats up most of the vacancies and seat reserve, leaving the most backward with nothing in their hand. Now, is that a reality?
How can they occupy it?
Is there a reality that entire positions have been cornered by the economically better off section? Therefore, I look at the data, relevant data. I don't want to spend time on that. But if you look at the relevant data, what Pankaj Mittal is saying is not justified by the facts.
Okay.
It is only an assumption or conjecture. You will see that, for example, if you take the data of the central government, 75 ministries, you will find that in 2022, about 89% of SC employees in central government were in C and D category.
C and D.
C and D. And only 11% in A and B. So, this is the evidence. There is a recent evidence from the National Sample Survey on Employment which also reveal that 78% of the government employee, here central plus state, combined, were from the lower income household and only 22% from the top income household.
Okay.
I have also classified low, medium and high. There, the share of the lowest, middle and higher income household is 41, 36 and 22. So the low and medium is 36 to 40% and the highest is 22. Same is the story in urban area. Now you can see that the actual facts are against what Pankaj Mittal has assumed or pointed out. The reservation policy has in fact benefited the economically weaker section more than the economically better section. Okay, so I think the major argument on which the creamy layer and economic criteria is based is not justified by the statistics. But the most important point, we should go ahead and talk about what is economic criteria and what is creamy layer. Now, creamy layer means what they are saying is that exclude the economically better off. The justification is that they can develop on their own without any reservation. Now, if they can develop without any reservation, they become discrimination free, then why do you require reservation on caste? They are free from caste disability. So you have economic criteria. So you can find that the creamy layer and economic criteria are sort of interlinked. Is it correct? Again, on the basis of facts.
No.
Now, my argument is that to exclude the creamy layer and to bring the economic criteria is based on the assumption that the economically better off section became free from discrimination, which is the basis of reservation policy.
Exactly.
Therefore, they don't require reservation and you exclude them. But is that assumption is true? Theoretically, this is not justified. Now, if you take all the theories of discrimination from USA and of Dr. Ambedkar, is that discrimination is based on identity.
Exactly.
It is not based on your merit.
Not economic criteria.
Yeah, it is not based on the fact that Aman Kamble is less meritorious. It is based on the fact that Aman Kamble is untouchable. Whether he is meritorious, more meritorious, less meritorious. So discrimination, group discrimination is based on the identity of the person and not the individual merit.
Right.
Now, if that is the case, is that the economically better off section among the scheduled castes became free of discrimination? Now again, I don't want to take a time. All the study shows that discrimination is independent of your economic standing. Discrimination is neutral to your economic standing.
Right.
Discrimination is faced by economically weak as well as economically stronger scheduled castes. Now that has been pointed out by the number of cases of atrocity. Atrocity is against both who are economically better off and who are economically worse off. But there are primary studies on employment, on farmer, on business, and you find that the scheduled caste farmer, scheduled caste business person, they all face discrimination in spite of the fact that they are economically reasonably better off. My own study, which has come out now, which is on the discrimination in employment, regular salaried employment in the government and the private sector, which the book has been wrote out by Oxford, we have found that there is a discrimination in the regular salaried job, in government job, of both those who are economically, those who are in low job and those who are in a higher economic job. On the contrary, what we have found is that the discrimination is more in the higher post than the lower posts. Lower posts are tolerated, but the higher posts are not. Now, the summary of this point is that discrimination is also faced by the economically better off section. Therefore, exclusion of criminal will harm the economically better off.
Right.
And also that is for the same reason you cannot have economic criteria. Because if you exclude economically better off and they face discrimination, then in that case their development will be affected. So I think the criminal argument is not based on the actual study and actual statistic, and therefore it is a weak justification, a weak academic justification as far as the recommendation by the learned is concerned. Now, second, the last 2 points is that
even President of India at that time, Ramnath Kovind, also faced discrimination violating the temple.
Exactly.
He also complained.
Exactly. And the children of these people, they face discrimination in seeking employment. They face discrimination in businesses.
Right.
The study by Ashim Prakash of 90 business person.
Okay.
He pointed out the entire discrimination faced by them. The book is on discrimination faced by Dalit businesses.
Okay.
Now, Dalit business persons are economically fairly reasonably well off, but they face discrimination in purchase and sale of the output and the commodity. They face discrimination getting loan. They are not easily accommodated into cheat fund organization, brokers organization. And there are other. In rural area, I have found that there is a discrimination faced by the grocer, restaurant owner, and also those who sort of run taxis and auto rickshaws. So I think that argument is not correct. But the first generation and to exclude the first generation as well as to exclude those who have just used the reservation once is also not backed by the facts that there is no evidence to show that once you use the reservation once, your discrimination will disappear. You use the reservation for one generation means once your discrimination will disappear. Imagine if a son of a clerk became a clerk or a class 4 employee. He will continue to face discrimination even on the basis of his background. So how can you just blindly say that just remove the first generation? A big section of the scheduled caste will be just out of reservation. All those who use reservation once will be out. Whether they face discrimination or not, what will be their development, that's not the concern of the judges. They have not made it qualified. They should qualify the sentence. Nah?
That's why we need diversity in the judiciary.
Yeah. That is there. Yeah, I think you are right. But that also is not a guarantee.
Not guaranteed.
Yeah. The last point is, of course, that there has to be time limit. Now, the time limit for reservation, that also is not qualified. Just you decide the period and go ahead. Now, time limit, there has to be time limit for reservation. And I know there are 1 or 2 countries like Japan, they have removed the special privileges of Borakuman, which are our counterpart as untouchable. But there the affirmative action policy was removed because discrimination was minimum, had been reduced minimum. And secondly, that the gap between the Borakuman and the average Japanese people was much less. So there are 2 criteria on the basis of which you should discontinue reservation. One is that discrimination is minimum now in all the multiple spheres. Scheduled castes do not face restriction in seeking job or business or doing farming or whatever. and that there is a less gap between the high caste and scheduled caste.
Right.
Now the evidence is not this. Evidence shows that the discrimination is rampant about the scheduled caste,
Yes.
despite the 75-year operation of the Untouchability Offence Act. I did not give the statistic. Between 1995 and 2022, there were about 4 lakh, more than 4 lakh cases of atrocity were registered. And they were registered both by economically better off and economically worse of scheduled caste.
Yes.
Beside, the gap is also there. Any indicator that you take per capita income, you take level of poverty, malnutrition, you take child mortality, you take educational level, you take civic communities, that is housing, whether you live in a good house or a bad house, you live in slum or you live in better houses. In all indicate life expectancy. The life expectancy of scheduled caste is 5 years less than as compared to the high caste. It is 60 for the high caste. I think for scheduled caste it's 55. So any indicator of human development you take, the scheduled caste lag behind. Now, if there is a gap, if there is a discrimination, why there is a hurry?
Yes.
You can mention this issue, that there should be limit on reservation, that there should be time bound, but you should qualify it.
Yes.
That it should be withdrawn, there should be time limit, provided that discrimination is minimum, provided the gap between scheduled caste and scheduled high caste is low. No mention of this. So these are general suggestions. Can you make a general suggestion which involve the life and death of the particular community? That don't give reservation to one generation, don't once you use for one generation or or take out after 10 years or 15 years without any qualifying. So I think all the academic recommendation, familiar economic criteria, one generation or use of reservation once or time limit are not backed adequately by the academic experience and evidence. Which means, you are only assuming it and making conjecture. You cannot do that. Because, the Supreme Court is, as I said, is a my-bap, because once they take a decision final, and they have to therefore think it several times before they give a decision like this, which affect the life and death of the community. I had given an example earlier also in my intervention that a similar decision was made during the British period.
Okay.
That is, the untouchable had a entry into the military. 75, right from 1750 till I think 1892.
Okay.
Or 1882. For 137 years, the untouchable were in military. No restriction. And they held the Britishers.
Right.
Koregaon is the shining example of that. But when after 1875, after mutiny, when the Brahmin and the middle class also, there was a policy of the British to include them in the military. And when they came, they said that how can we sit together with the scheduled caste? How can we work under them? Because they were already in higher position. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's father was a Subedar major. So they objected to it. So British plays a trick. They needed more the middle caste and the high caste than the scheduled caste. After having used them for 137 years, they set up a committee. Committee developed a concept that all those castes which are martial race will be given entry into the military, other will be taken out.
Okay.
So the Jat and the Sikhs were brought in. Scheduled caste reservation, entry into the military was withdrawn.
Okay.
And it affected the scheduled caste so badly. So it is only the entry of the scheduled caste was allowed in the military in 1942. When Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar was a member of the Defense Council, he, during the Second World War, he then requested British that scheduled caste should be allowed to enter into the military. Mar Battalion was formed.
Okay, at that time.
That is how it started. But for 50 years, untouchable were so badly affected. Because urbanization and militarization were the two sources of economic development. They were stopped. So the point that I am making, Aman, is that whenever there is a question of making policy for such a deprived section like untouchable, the Supreme Court has to think twice.
Yes.
And backed by their decision with a solid evidence,
And with the compassion too.
With compassion also. So I think this is the issue. The last point is I would like to mention and stop, and then we go to the other issue is the observation made by Pankaj Mittal. They are very disturbing observation.
Right.
One observation he is saying is that the basis of reservation should be other than anything than caste.
Other than caste.
Because he says that we deny the caste discrimination and we bring the caste equality in the constitution legally, but also we give the reservation policy based on caste, so that promote casteism. Now, is it true? Now, this question was raised to Baba Saheb Ambedkar also.
Okay.
That if you give the political reservation based on caste, it will increase the caste divide and casteism, and also about the job. Now, Baba Saheb, in what Congress and Gandhi have done to untouchable, has addressed this issue.
Okay.
And he refuted this argument. He said, no, the reservation will improve the economic and educational standing of the scheduled caste. And it will reduce the inequality between high caste and the scheduled caste. It will bring them together, and that will help them. Equality between the caste, remove the caste prejudices. Development always will help. But the second and most important observation that he said was, at the moment the untouchables are isolated, socially isolated, residentially isolated. There is no interaction.
No.
There is always a prejudice. So he said that if there is a reservation, scheduled caste MLAs and MPs will go in the parliament, interact with the high caste member in parliament, debate, discuss. Similarly, the scheduled caste employees will be in the bureaucracy. So they will interact with the high caste employees,
Yes.
Bureaucrats. A student in the education institution will interact. Now this interaction help to understand each other problem in a better way.
Right.
And remove the prejudice and bring certain amount of harmony and togetherness.
Right.
Not divide or casteism, which Pankaj Mittal is saying. Even at the theoretical level. There is no empirical studies, but theoretical level we can argue. The last point is by Pankaj Mittal. He's saying, I don't know for what reason he's saying. What was his intention to say that Varna is better than caste?
Yes. He
But there is
quoted Bhagavad Gita too.
Yeah, but now the point is that the faith in Varna, he said that, the learned judge said that I read Gita, I read Ramcharitmanas of Tulsidas. Now this is his personal view, personal faith. We don't have a problem.
Exactly.
But why should he bring into the decision, Supreme Court decision? So there is obviously certain intention behind it. So what he is arguing is that Varna is better than caste. Thereby, I think what he is trying to say is that Varna is okay.
For Varna.
Four Varna, which include also the fifth Varna, the untouchable caste, untouchable also. Now, mentioning Ramcharitmanas, which has supported the discrimination of women and Shudra, is something which should not have been quoted. But Gita's theory of Varna is also problematic, na?
Yes.
The Gita's theory say that, and Pankaj Mittal learned just also say that it is based on the innate quality of the person. You have innate quality of teaching, you have innate quality of military, you have innate quality for business. And you classify them into those Varnas then. One can move from one Varna to another Varna. But are the qualities innate? Qualities, developing of capability is a function of education.
Yes.
If you are illiterate, you have less capability. If you are a postgraduate, your capability are increased, and you will get to know whether you can really serve the military or teacher or bureaucracy. So it's always changing.
Yes.
So to say that there is innate capability which are fixed in a way cannot be changed is a wrong assumption. And this is in fact is a racist theory.
Yes.
Because in USA is also the same thing. Blacks are backward, underdeveloped. Whites are superior.
Yes.
So that's racism is brought in to justify the lower status of black. It's the same thing.
Yes.
In fact, it seems to me that Gita has picked up this innateness from the Manusmriti. I will try to read it out for you.
Yes, yes.
For example, Manusmriti said, a Shudra, though emancipated by his master, is not released from servitude, since that is innate in him, Who can set him free from it? that the Shudra has certain innate qualities, and that quality is to serve the high caste.
Yes.
Now this is Manusmriti, which has been used in a modified form by Gita, to which learned Judge Pankaj Mittal support. So I think these are some of these limitation of the judgment and recommendation, which I think need to be considered, and this calls for a reconsideration by the Supreme Court in a way. Yeah.
So many people have, I think, files review petitions. And I think what you said since last 30-40 minutes, there is a multiple attack on reservation, I think.
Yeah.
But still there is an issue that so many people, especially in South India, we are finding that Mala, there is conflict between Mala and Madhika, even Maharashtra, Matang and Mahar, or even in North India, there is conflict between Valmiki and Chamar and other communities. So what is the ultimate policy you suggest? Because at anyhow, there is a discrimination, or they are lagging behind. So how you suggest how they will come forward?
I think this issue has been addressed by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar.
Right.
That is.
But in the advanced area?
In the present period, see, the point is that the first thing that we must know the information, we should have a database.
That is important.
Is there an inequality in the development of, say, Matang, Chamar and Mahar, Mala and Madhika, Valmiki and Jatau, Valmiki and Majbi Singh?
Yes.
At the moment, you get some statistic. It's not that you get some. For example, the Chief Justice has quoted the study of Uma Ramaswamy, where the literacy rate of Malas are lower than that of high caste. But you don't have the full information. What is the representation in job? What is are they economically backward? Ownership of land and business? What is their educational level? What is the nature of discrimination that they face from the subcaste?
Forward caste.
So I think what we need is the information. Once we have an information, two things will happen.
Okay.
One is that we will know that there is an inequality. That some subcastes like Mala, Madhikas, Matang, Valmikis are lagging behind the Mahar, Mala and Charmakar. So we will get to know that. Then we will get to know where are they lacking. We know the reasons. Then we can develop policies.
Okay.
Now the policies, what policies we should develop? The Supreme Court is now defended the subcaste reservation in addition to the main reservation. I think if you go by Dr. Ambedkar's opinion, and I also feel that way to a greater extent, is that there should be the policy of reservation for all subcastes should be followed. But if there is underrepresentation of some subcaste, and that underrepresentation need to be increased, there is no doubt about it. But that underrepresentation is because they have their income level is low, because they don't have land and sources of income. And therefore, their education is low, therefore their representation is less in the government job, if at all it is there. Theoretically, we can say then the policy should be to give them the means of production, give them land, give them business, give them scholarship for the educational development. So if there are more graduate, more postgraduate, then more of them will try to get into the reservation. But if you keep the inequality within the subcaste, if you keep majority of them without ownership of means of production and lower level education, even if you give a subcaste reservation, they will not be able to use it.
Exactly.
A small section will use it. So my suggestion would be that the policy should be the policy of reservation, similar policy for all the subcaste. But for those subcastes who lag economically and educationally behind, there should be a separate policy of economic and educational empowerment for them, so that they are able to make use of reservation. To some extent, in some cases, there is no harm in government saying that, okay, we will give preference.
Preference.
Yeah. But legitimate policy, illegal policy might have, will not help to reduce the gap, but its political consequences might be different. There will be a political divide between the subcaste. So for that reason, I think the policy suggested by Baba Sahib Ambedkar and some improvisation which I suggested should be a better alternative.
Okay. So, sir clearly explained that the decision which given by Supreme Court is not in favor of means not in favor of scheduled caste or in scheduled tribe, or there will be a discrimination even after the quota within the quota. So, sir also suggested the policies, and even Dr. Ambedkar at that time suggested the policies to develop these peoples. So, sir, thanks for coming and giving us a clear vision regarding this subject and regarding this issue. Thanks for joining us. Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much.